And I'm Crispino. We're from Hate Breed. I'm Matt from the Planet Smashers.
We're the Scientists.
I'm Rob. I'm Josh. And we're with Psychostick.
This is Aaron from Red Fang, and you are
listening to
Bucketlist.
Hi, I'm Mario from The Real Mackenzies.
I'm Phil from Bugangi.
We're from Caravan.
Bash, and I'm from Slaves on Dope.
I'm Kevin Keegan. And the band Dead Quiet.
We are Chief Grinder.
And you are listening to
Bucketlist.
Hello, we are Ashes and we're from Portugal.
I'm Jordan Alexander.
Scott from Colonel Sun.
We're Overcoats.
It's Charles here. Some Red Skies.
This is Spencer from Periphery, and you're
listening to
Bucketlist.
My name's Seth Anderson.
Terrible people.
Hey, I'm Robbie Stuntman from Bose. This is Curtis from Fuel Damage.
Hey, this is Donnie from Brew.
This is Hispin from On the Lord.
listening to
You're listening to the Bucketlist Radio Podcast, putting the best music in your ears before you kick it. Good evening, friends. Welcome to this brand new episode of the Bucketlist Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Gaynor, and the song that you just heard was Organic Adventures by UK post-rock duo Lost Colours. I am going to talk a little bit more about that song and that record in a little bit, but first, let's take care of a little piece of business. This podcast is brought to you by Bucketfest 3.0. That's right, the good people at Bucketlist are throwing a big party this year, the third of its kind, and it's going to be happening on Friday, July 7th at Piranha Bar in Montreal, Quebec. This is a party that's not only celebrating the year that was in Bucketlist, where we have a bunch of really awesome bands play and we get together and drink some beers and really just sort of show our love and appreciation for everybody who's shown our site love and appreciation, but it is also the celebration of the 5-year anniversary of our website, bucketlistmusicreviews.com. So check it out on Facebook, look up Bucketfest 3.0. We've got a killer lineup of bands performing that night with a really fun lineup, super diverse lineup. There's going to be Miscellaneum, which is a hip-hop group, Mooch, super great stoner rock band, my buddies, Old School Johnny, the poster says punk rock. I don't even know what you'd call them, but it's just a fun dancing time. Little Dirt Cannon. Hey, if you're a big fan of Every Time I Die, but can't see Every Time I Die, come see Dirt Cannon. And then the progenitors of Raunch and Roll, Hamilton, Ontario's Voltang. So go online. Tickets go on sale, or have been on sale since March 1st, so get them while they're hot. You can get them online before the party for $8. They're going to be $10 at the door. No guest list. Don't be calling me. I get people texting me yo, can you just put me on the list? I'll buy beer and buy a t-shirt. Doesn't work like that, man. Support independent music. We got to try to put a little bit of money in people's pockets. So pay $8, you cheap bastards. Doors are at 7:30. Show starts at 8. And then DJ Lizard Queen, our own Liz Imperiale, is going to be DJs in the rest of the night, doing some sick 80s and 90s dance remixes for y'all. So it's going to be super fun. Check that out. All right, let's talk a little bit more about what we just heard. Now, for those of you who had heard my sort of solo episodes of the radio show back when we were on CJLO, I know it sort of tended to be the metal show for Bucketlist, but my tastes have broadened, or my tastes have always been kind of broad, and I really love instrumental post-rock in the same kind of vein that Lost Colours is doing, that incorporates psychedelica. It's got a little bit of it's got really Zen vibes, but then really builds to these huge crescendos. It reminds me of bands like Explosions in the Sky, Do Make Say Think, just really great compositional stuff, and I think they, for the most part, really hit that, and the tones are really clear too, right? It can get a little muddy in that stuff if you don't do it, if you're not exact about how your compositions are put together, and I think those guys have really got it. So, before this turns into the Jesse Hour, which, it's going to happen, we're going to play some heavier stuff later tonight, I thought I'd try to just crescendo up to that. But before we get to that, a little housekeeping, just so you're in the know. I'm flying solo tonight. That's unfortunately, I don't have the crew with me, so it's just going to be me emceeing this particular episode of the show. So it'll be a bit of a recap. We're going to play some songs by bands that were reviewed on bucketlistmusicreview.com over the last couple of weeks, and then some stuff that I really like. I'm going to play some music related to a festival that I went to a couple of weekends ago that was super dope, and then I'll, drone on and free associate as I normally am wont to do. There's so many topics that I would love to cover in tonight's show, but what happens is when we all get in a room to kind of plan out how this podcast is going to go, or how it's going to go, we come up with a million ideas. And there's a lot of topics that I would love to cover tonight, but we're going to save them. So please tune in for future episodes of the Bucketlist podcast when we have the whole crew, because there's a number of episodes that we have been working on that I think are going to be super duper interesting. And yeah, definitely better if we have the room full of people talking about them than just me blabbing at you for a little bit. So, speaking of me blabbing, I've been doing it for too long. So let's get to some music. I'm going to play you a track by a band from Vancouver, British Columbia called Bort. Bort just recently put out an album called Crossing the Desert, and it was one of the highest rated albums on the site on bucketlistmusicreviews.com in the last couple of weeks. And although before I was talking about playing more post-rock and that I was going to continue on in that vein, I lied to you. Bort are certainly not a post-rock band, but in terms of atmosphere, they bring that in heaps and droves. And so Like I said, before this turns into the Jesse grind your face off hour, let's really try to, I really want to ramp up to that point, and I think this is a really great way to do it. So without further ado, this is Vancouver's Bort, off of their record Crossing the Desert. This is a track that is called Lady Kyteler. You're listening to Bucketlist Music Reviews podcast. I know Liz doesn't like when I do that because it makes it sound more like a radio show. But when it's just me, I'm going to do it that way, since I have the microphone and you have to listen to what I say. All right, here's some music.
just put the pain to rest. Yeah, you better believe. You better. That angel on your right, you're gonna cut his throat tonight. Yeah, you think it's thieves.
Welcome back, fellow weirdos. That slab of tasty pop punk that you just heard was by Winnipeg's Stick Around. A track called Detox off of their brand new record that is called In This Life. Before that, we had some fellow Canadiana, bit of a revival band, Acid Test, back after 25 years with a new EP. It was pretty weird stuff there, but I kind of dig it. And we kick things off with Bort, Vancouver, British Columbia's Bort, and their new record, Crossing the Desert, with a song called Lady Kyteler. All right, so back to that Stick Around jam. I'm super happy that there are people out there making quality pop punk still. You got to defend the pop punk. It's a genre that unfairly gets crapped on by people that simply don't like it or don't appreciate it for a whole bunch of things that it shouldn't be crapped on for. And look, it's not a big part of my record collection. I tend to, as you know, if you've listened to me host the various shows that I host, I tend towards things of a little bit more extreme nature. But pop punk is something that, if pulled off correctly, can sound really great. And I think the Stick Around guys do a really good job of it. It's about harmonies. It is a pop sensibility. It's about creating that while balancing it with a drive and an energy without sounding too antiseptic. And I think in that track there, these guys have really achieved a good sort of that like the cleaner parts of like the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s skate punk sound. And I think Mickey Ellsworth in his review did a really good job of pointing out some of the like kind of pseudo-punk bands that are making those sounds, that they're kind of like rock bands on the verge with punk tendencies, like Smoke or Fire and the Flatliners. And this is definitely in the vein of that. And one of the things that people crap on pop punk for is that, it all sounds the same. And I hate that criticism of any genre of music, because effectively that's what you're saying, is that you just don't like that sound. And that's fair. That's an okay criticism. But I guarantee you, there are genres or subgenres within your musical taste that are like cold pizza. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit old and a little bit crappy. If it tastes the same as what you like, you're going to eat it. I will paint myself with that brush. I am. There are many genres of music where I don't care if the band is doing something original. I just want to hear more of it. D-beat, yes, it all sounds like Discharge. And it's all got that one drum beat, but goddamn, like you put out a half decent D-beat album, you don't mess it up, you play it really fast. Sure, you're not changing the game, you're not shifting the paradigm. I'm still gonna eat it. I like it. So pop punk fans out there, don't despair. There are bands out there like Stick Around who are still putting out good stuff. Now, onto that Acid Test track. I don't know. I know literally zero about this band. I only was made aware of them once the review went up on Bucketlist. But these guys were hot in the 90s, and they're back after 25 years. Who does that? That is quite the break to come back after 25 years with more ideas or new ideas. And honestly, I have to admit, I haven't had the time to go back and listen to their old discography and kind of sort of figure out the comparisons. But, that's just the act of being able to put out new music 25 years afterwards. And it's clearly not a money grab. It's not like these guys are like mega rich rock stars who have some like album commitment they have to put out. This is clearly at least at first sight, a labor of love. And it's an interesting sound. Like there's weird kind of, gothy elements to it, but it's still got this sort of like weird, pop, R&B, funk blend. There's a whole bunch of like interesting stuff going there, so I kind of dig it. And yeah, like Bort, I'm just into that. Like that's just fun, atmospheric kind of desert rock. And the cover of that record features a wolf like who is smoking a joint, and the smoke makes their logo while there's somebody standing at a desert scene. So like, you got me, dude. Like, I'm into that. I'll buy the merch. Like if you have that in a silk screen that I can like put on the side of a panel van somewhere, like let's party. Let's make it happen. I digress. Friends, it is time for some heavy goddamn metal. I waited long enough. How long did I go? I went a whole half hour without going to Buzzsaw Town. That's, for who you have hosting the show tonight, I'd have to say that's a monumental achievement. I pat myself on the back with both hands. So, what are we going to play? Well, let's start off with some stuff, with some metal records that were reviewed on the site over the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to start with a track by an Italian band called Dogmathica. They just put out a new record called Start Become Nothing. And so this track itself is called Praghma. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll talk a little bit more about it once we get back from listening to some music. Welcome back, fellow steaming piles of organic material. The song that you just heard was by a band from Toronto, Ontario called Amplitusion. I don't know if band's the right word. It was actually a solo project by a Toronto musician by the name of James Sheenan. That was a song off of his new record called The Human Zoo. The track was called Power to the Sheeple, which is kind of just like the best thing ever on the internet right now. I'm going to get back to that a little bit later. The first song that we heard was indeed that Italian metal band called Dogmathica with their song Praghma, which I quite enjoy that. What's really interesting about Dogmathica, but more so Italian metal in general, and I don't mean to overgeneralize because there's a whole wide swath of genres and styles of metal that is played in Italy. But there seems to be a strong and powerful scene for the more symphonic or, let's say, virtuistic styles of metal. So something like Dogmathica that's very complicated, uses lots of polyrhythms, while very much in a different style. It calls to mind other bands like Discharge from Italy, who are a fantastic sort of complex proggy metal band. Even the more symphonic stuff, like a Flesh God Apocalypse from Italy, who are great, really complex compositions. And even when you get into the slower, doomier, heavier, evil stuff from Italy, there definitely seems to be a focus on complexity and in compositional style. So it's just interesting that seems to be thematic across a very large country with a whole bunch of different bands from different regions. But I kind of dig that. Jason Greenberg from Bucketlist liked that, so I have to say that I like it less because he likes it, because Jason doesn't like anything that is good, and so it's a rule. So it's like the computer on that episode of Star Trek when Kirk asks it to define love and it starts sparking and kind of blows up. When I like something that Jason likes, it gives me a headache for a couple of minutes that I have to recover from. And yeah, that Amplitusion track, I mean, serviceable. I don't think really my cup of tea, but there's good stuff going on there. It's driving. It's definitely built around a structure of thrash, and I'm a big fan of thrash. But it definitely pulls mostly from the school of German thrash bands like Creator. It's ordered, structured. There's something a little bit synthetic about the attack, and that may be due to the fact that this is a one-man project, so he might be composing all the music, but I'm assuming that those are programmed drums, which is totally cool. There's so many great basement projects or studio projects where it's all written by one person and it can sound great. I just find from a songwriting standpoint, the power of power to the sheeple, that only works, and Sid Gunn pointed this out in his review that only works because it's actually unintentionally hilarious. It's funnier than I think it was intended to be funny, and so that it is just kind of puts a big smile on your face, but it's a little cringeworthy. But again, that's just personal taste in terms of the style and the composition there, and that also comes down to album art. It just feels. Parts of this feel a little kind of high school, and I know that's lame and a little bit abusive, but to put so much effort into the music, the packaging around it, and just some of the finer details would be a little bit better. But there's definitely there are great ideas there. Speaking of band that used to have a lot of good ideas, but really hasn't been on the good idea train as of late, is a band from Norway called Dimmu Borgir. And now, Dimmu Borgir is probably one of the best well-known black metal-ish bands, even if you don't know anything about black metal. A lot of people, especially in the early 2000s, saw this band pop up. They were they had a song, and I can't remember exactly what song from exactly record. It got super popular because it was on a bunch of skate vids, and I think it actually showed up in a couple of the CKY videos. So that put them on people's radar. Anyway, they're a huge band, and they actually have just released a new record this year called Eonian. And what I've heard so far, not really my jam. But I'm going to play a track from this record, and then we can kind of talk about... we talk a little bit more about that, talk about the legacy of Dimmu Borgir and the country of Norway when it comes to metal. So, without further ado, this is a track off of Dimmu Borgir's newest record. It is called, it's a doozy. Well, it's not that much of a doozy. Interdimensional Summit. It's a pretty sick name. All right, let's listen to Interdimensional Summit, and then let's have a little discussion. Okay, similar to that Amplitusion track, I don't hate that Dimmu Borgir song. It's serviceable, but there are problems. Dimmu Borgir are a band that have constantly reinvented themselves or incorporated more and more elements into their sound as they continue to progress. And certainly they caught flack for getting away from the sort of more traditional black metal sound as they incorporated more symphonic or more electronic sounds into their sound. But at their core, they would always have that sort of like really good, evil metal would be basis to it, black metal basis to it. And what I find on this record, and Sid, who reviewed it, said the same thing. Actually, it wasn't Sid who reviewed this. I apologize. Mickey Ellsworth reviewed this. And Mickey had a similar thought in that on this record, it just felt like they had sucked the life out of their core sound because they decided to spend so much time and lean so heavily into the symphonic or the choir elements of their sound. And then there's just all of these kind of dynamic issues between the heavy parts and the chorus that just don't seem to match up. There's not really a great flow in between a lot of the aspects of that song, and it really takes away from the power and the impact of it. And so, it's unfortunate because they are a band that is part of a pantheon of great metal bands. And look, the discussion of Norwegian black metal and its place in history is a complicated and difficult one. But this is a band from the same country as almighty greats like Gorgoroth or Enslaved or Darkthrone or Arcturus or Satyricon, Ulver. There's a couple others too. I mean, look, you can't talk about Norway without mentioning Burzum or Mayhem, but bands like that. Always difficult to discuss those bands without also bringing up the problematic nature of those bands. But it's still, Norway as a country left an indelible mark on music, and I think Dimmu Borgir is part of that. But unfortunately, in their new efforts, they seem to really have gotten away from that core sound. So it's too bad. But again, like I said, I don't hate it. It's just it's a strong meh for me on that one. Things that are not meh though, aren't my transitions super duper good? I saw a bunch of great music over the last couple of weeks, and 2 weeks ago, on the first weekend of June, I got to attend Montreal, Quebec's Earslaughter Festival. So this is a festival that has been running for 3 years now. So this year was the third edition of Earslaughter, completely sold out. And this is a festival that I love, not only because it brings excellent bands to the city of Montreal, but it is curated so well and executed so well by a team of people that are really passionate about this style of music. So Earslaughter is a grindcore and death metal festival run by a number of people, a friend of mine, Dave Matras, being one of them. And it's sort of the spiritual successor to the Obscene Extreme America edition that happened about 4 years ago, where Cherby from the Czech Republic, who runs the big Obscene Extreme festival out there, decided to try to bring it to Montreal. Unfortunately, while he brought a lot of really great bands, the turnout wasn't that excellent. But some people here said, "Look, there is a dedicated scene for aggressive extreme music of this level in Montreal. We just need to make sure that we kind of incubate it. We can't just do a one-off at a big venue and hope that it's going to go from there. We need some time to develop it." And over 3 years, Dave, Michael, Michelle Ayoub, and a bunch of other people have really put a lot of work into bringing building an incredible festival, not only from the bands that they put together, but really making sure that it's just a fun, great experience. So I attended the first day of Earslaughter Volume 3. I had a blast. You can go to bucketlistmusicreviews.com and see my review of that day. But there were so many great performances. And while, the big bands, Terrors or LA played, Nunslaughter played, there was a bunch of that stuff. There were so many great smaller bands or local bands or, smaller touring bands that played that I got to discover that I really fell in love with. And many of them are Canadian. So I thought what I could do is just play a small excerpt, a couple of bands, 3 or 4 songs from some of my favorite stuff that I discovered at Earslaughter Volume 3. So what are we going to listen to right now? What we're going to do first up, what do I have to decide now? Okay. I'm going to hit you with my absolute favorite. The band that to me was my favorite set of that entire day of Earslaughter. It's a band from Vancouver called Six Brew Bantha, and they just put out a record a little while ago called Blight, and this is grindcore done excellently. So without further ado, this is Six Brew Bantha from their record called Blight. This song is called Wholesale Genocide. Enjoy! Welcome back, Grind Freaks. So, what did you just hear? You just heard Existench, Halifax Legends. This band started in like 1993, 1994, still going. That's off of the split that they did with Deboned, a track called Homeless. Before that, we had Winnipeg, Manitoba's Flash Out with a song called Dishonorable Discharge. I guess the greatest recommendation or the greatest commendation I can give that band is that I did not know them before the festival, and as soon as I saw them play, I went to their merch table and I bought a super sick ball cap that says Flash Out on it, because they were sweet dudes and the music was really, really, really good. Before that, we had a Montreal band called ULTRARAT with a song called Secte. They were the great breath of like kind of an amuse-bouche at the festival, if you will, because they were pure raw D-beat punk in a night of like death metal and grindcore. It's great to get some like super raw D-beat in there, and those guys are great. So like if you're into bands like Dark Circles from Montreal too that really bring that kind of D-beat swagger, these guys have that with just a little bit more like feedback drenching the whole nonsense. And we kicked things off with, like I said, a band that stole my heart at Earslaughter. And they stole a bit of my hearing, a band from British Columbia called Brew Bantha, who just really nail like all of those like angular, articulate like grindcore changes that make like the blasting so much more fun, because you never know when it's just going to switch things up with like 2 or 3 seconds of, well, what the hell is that, and then back into the blast. And those guys are just super duper fun, angry as all fuck. It's too good. And I think we're so spoiled in a city like Montreal because of the tireless dedication of so many people in local music scenes that push really hard, not only to bring these huge bands in, but also to like create spaces for smaller acts and local acts to like to share those stages with bigger bands. So while we get to see these, the big shows in Metropolis, and we get to see the big shows at like Corona and all that sort of stuff, there are these promoters that are really kind of laboring and doing it as a labor of love for not a lot of recognition and no sleep to really kind of make sure that those music scenes happen. And I think even though Puza Fest has kind of grown into this massive thing, I see that as coming from a same sort of space, at least from my perspective in the first couple of years, because it just seemed like people being like, hey, we should do something really cool that's like a small punk rock festival. Now it's become this sort of big thing, but things like that, like Earslaughter, like a Varning from Montreal, which is happening soon at Catacombs, which is a really excellent underground punk rock festival. Things like Fatale Fest, R.I.P. Fatale Fest forever. Those are the work of people who have put in way more effort and got probably took way more shit than they needed to from people and whiny music fans everywhere. So thank you, promoters out there and showrunners who are putting shit together for us music fans. And if you like music, go out and support that stuff. I know that like Liz and Kate and a bunch of people have already talked a lot about festivals and festival season, but like to me, if I am anything, I am a tireless supporter of putting your bucks where your mouth is. Get your money out there. If you like a band, go see them live. Buy their shit. Buy their records. Buy their merch. Buy that sick Flash Out ball cap. It's not only because it's dope and makes you look fly, but because you're helping put gas in the tank of a band that drove all the way across the country just to play a show for you. So like mad important. My friends, I think that's going to do it for us tonight on this episode of the Bucketlist Radio Show. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Kind of a short episode this week. Will definitely be longer once we have a little bit of a longer group around the table. But I thought what I would do, because we were talking a lot about local music, is leave you with a couple of other favorites of mine, some tracks that I think are thematically similar to some of the stuff that we've heard tonight. But I wanted to just to highlight some of, again, how lucky we are in this country to have such a great and strong music scene, and so many great, cool, interesting people making music. So we should put some money in their pockets. So without further ado, let me end off. Say goodnight. We'll see you guys in hopefully no more than a couple of weeks when we come out with the next episode of Bucketlist Radio. Again, remember, this podcast is brought to you by Bucketfest 3.0. It is our big annual party that celebrates all things Bucketfest. and this year is going to be pretty goddamn amazing. So we, just to get you, I'm going to the internet again right now. Please don't kill me, Liz, because I want to make sure that I get all the information right. It is on July 6th. It starts at 7:30. It's at Piranha Bar. Tickets are super cheap. Go to Facebook and look up Bucketfest 3.0, and you're going to see a bunch of sick sets from like bands like Mooch, and Old School Johnny, Miscellaneum, Dirt Cannon, Voltang. I'll probably be there. It's the first time I'm going to be at a Bucketfest because I'm not a horrendous piece of shit who missed it the last couple of years. So you get to hang out with me. That's pretty much a prize in itself, I guess. And like I said, it would be like cool drink specials. Liz is going to DJ all night, so that's going to be pretty sick. Please come check that out. And be sure to check out all the content at bucketlistmusicreviews.com. All right, that's it for me, guys. We're going to play some really fun, happy, cheery music. We're going to start off with a track from a band from Ontario and from Montreal. I think they're based in Ontario now. A band called Greber. This is a two-piece, like, I don't know. They're just... if I were to give them a genre of music, I'd just say pissed. So this is off of their record from a couple of years ago called Kiln-Hardened Psalms. It's a track called Harry Manx. And then the last thing you're going to hear from us tonight is a track, right? A really epic band from Halifax called Botfly with a song called Artificial. Enjoy, and I will see you guys next time.